spending time with us today. And, I'd like to formally introduce you, obviously, to our fourth batch of great teams. I think you're going to probably lead with a couple of slides, and then we'll jump into the Q&A.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome.
Amanda, are you on? I guess not yet. So let me kick off the intro, anyways.
Okay.
And anybody from T-Mobile on? I don't see Rick either.
We have several. We got Ron and Durga and Lee and a few others.
Good morning, John. It's Christina.
Hi, John.
Christina, can you track down Amanda? She has my presentation.
Yep, I'll go find her.
All right. In the meantime, let me kick it off. Hello, fourth cohorts and all our partners of the Open Innovation Lab. This is always a highlight for me to brag about T-Mobile and what we do. And obviously a pleasure to talk to Jim and everybody on the call here. It's interesting. I'm sure Jim has told you all about this. We started the Open Innovation Lab in earnest as one of the early co-founders in the middle of the pandemic, not expecting much, but much has been achieved. And I'd love to share with you some examples of some of the work that's still ongoing, actually, with the graduates from the first batch, the first cohort of the Open Innovation Lab. And certainly you are the fourth cohort, and would like to welcome everybody. And I do have a surprise for you on the last page of my slides, if we can ever track them down. A bit of my background. I joined T-Mobile in April of 2020. That seems like a long time ago. After the merger of Sprint and T-Mobile, at Sprint I was the CTO at Sprint. At new T-Mobile, I'm responsible for advanced and emerging technologies. And one of the most fun things I get to do is to have my team work closely with startups and innovators and clever people out anywhere in the world to find new use cases and new ideas to leverage the brand spanking new 5G network that we are building. So very excited to have everybody on. Do we have my charts yet?
Yes,
I've got them now.
Oh, great.
Hey, Amanda, are you on?
Yes, I'm on.
Do you have my charts?
I do.
Are you sharing it?
I am trying to share now. Teams didn't give me permissions initially, so let me try again.
All right.
Can you see my screen now?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Apologies, it says that it's sharing.
If you want to send the charts over to me, Amanda, I'm happy to share from my screen.
Well, we've got videos embedded, Jim, so
okay.
the file size is not accommodating of
No
sending.
No worries.
Let me try one more time. Apologize.
So let me get started anyways while Amanda's trying to figure it out so there's less pressure on her to make this work. We're going to be spending $40 billion. We are in the process of spending $40 billion to build a multi-band 5G network that, I'm totally biased in this, but it's going to be the best 5G network in the country simply because we have all the right assets. And even if you look at the benchmarks, we have the best 5G availability globally today. If you believe the benchmark reports from OpenSignal, there's no up charges for 5G service to our customers, so we're not charging them a premium. And the trick to being successful in 5G is to put all the spectrum assets we have to work, and that's exactly what we're doing. And we are in the middle of a very fast-paced rollout right now. We're putting up thousands of sites a month with 5G. In the process, we're also merging our networks with Sprint. So we're sort of killing two birds with one stone, picking the best sites from both companies and adding 5G to them while we're doing that. And that's why we're able to achieve the cost synergies that we did. In a wireless world, I think all of you know this, the spectrum is king. And the reason why we're able to build our 5G network, oh, there you go, I can see the charts now. I think I just went through this page here, Amanda. If you go to the next page. In wireless, spectrum is king. And to be successful in rolling out a 5G network, you really need to have all three types of spectrums: low band, mid band, and really high band spectrum like millimeter wave. Low band spectrum covers a bigger area, but doesn't have as much capacity. Millimeter wave provides a lot of capacity, high speeds, but doesn't provide very good coverage. And the Goldilocks in the band is the mid band layer. In our case, we use the 2.5 gigahertz band to really give us sufficient capacity and pretty good coverage, especially in urban areas. And in the United States, that's where we are lacking. The rest of the other two operators do not have any freed up mid-band layer, and that's why there's so much interest in the C-band auction recently. And in fact, right now, as we're talking, there's another auction going off right now in the 3.45 gigahertz band for mid-band spectrum. In the case of T-Mobile, because of the merger with Sprint, we were able to basically accumulate a very strong asset base of spectrum bands that would take us to the next level in terms of performance over LTE. And this is why I said that I think we're going to maintain our lead in terms of performance and capacity throughout the entire 5G era, because we have such strong spectrum assets. It's important for this group to understand that, because as we look at working with you on use cases that leverages 5G in your applications, you want to work with an operator that has the breadth and depth of 5G coverage nationwide, and this is what we bring to the table for you. If you go to the next page, Amanda, good progress so far. In fact, just this morning we announced new coverage numbers. We cover now 308 million people in the country. So almost everyone in the country now can get 5G. 600 megahertz, which is our low band spectrum, is available in all 50 states and Puerto Rico. With a 2.5 gigahertz band, which is my favorite band since I spent half my life working on it. It covers now almost 190 million people. And we expect to get to the magical milestone of 200 million people by the end of this year. We also roll out the first standalone 5G network, actually in the world, still first in the country. And standalone 5G is important because this is the foundation where you can get low latency and massive capacity, right? It's the foundation in the core network where we actually cut our apron strings to LTE once and for all and run on 5G. So Rick Balakia just joined. Thanks for showing up for work late, Rick. Well, I'm going to see what I can. I don't know how I got this WebEx thing to work on Teams, but I asked the IT folks this morning. They said, "Oh no, you cannot do it."
I'm impressed if you got WebEx and Teams to work together.
No, I can even explain the camera. If the thing chair around here actually can, you might be able to see.
Yeah, it would be better.
You can sit on that chair. There you go. Can everybody see Rick now?
Yep. Hey, Rick.
Hey.
All right. So standalone 5G is important, especially when we talk to the fourth cohort, because this is where you get the best of 5G, low latency, massive capacity. You cannot do that if you're basically still stuck on LTE. And so we would first roll it out. We're continuing to add more standalone 5G capability. Go to the next slide, Amanda. So if you look at the benchmarks, it shows that we do have the best performing 5G network. You can look at Ookla, which is, if you run a speed test, typically that's what you'll be using. We do have the highest median download speeds and also the most consistency in terms of time spent on 5G. In fact, globally, I think in Open Signal, it shows that the T-Mobile customers in the US have more time on 5G than any other country. I think we were statistically tied with Kuwait, with the operator in Kuwait, but then Kuwait, as you know, is smaller than New Jersey. So that's not really a fair comparison. Umlaut it shows basically we have the best 5G score in 44 of 50 states. And most recently, Open Signal's report just came out earlier this week as well, that we continue to lead with 5G download speed. So performance looks really good. And like I said, because of our strong spectrum assets and the fact that we have momentum and a leg up on the competition in building our 5G network, we should be able to maintain this lead in 5G for the rest of the 5G era. Candidly, don't tell I said this to don't tell this to Verizon, but Verizon had the lead on LTE. I mean, they had a lead for the whole decade because they got started early. They built the foundation strongly, and the rest of us were just catching up. Well, I think with 5G, it's our time, and it's our turn. Verizon and AT&T are still mucking around trying to buy more spectrum in the middle of an auction as we're speaking right now, and yet, you know, T-Mobile is already covering 308 million people with 5G. So we're way ahead of the competition. I think we're going to be continuing to lead the 5G coverage and capacity story for the rest of the 5G era. So where are we going with the rest of the build? Next chart, good momentum. Extended range 5Gs using our low band spectrum. We cover more than 300 million people already today. 97% of Americans will be covered by end of next year. And the intention is to bring 5G to every corner of the country. This is important because if you know anything about T-Mobile, we have done really well in the metro areas and in many of the top 25 markets. We have more customers than AT&T or Verizon. What we have not penetrated well is in what we call small town rural, small medium rural areas. And that's our next frontier, and we want to make the same impact there. And to do that, we're going to use 5G as our weapon. And that's why we're not putting millimeter wave 5G in metro areas and stadiums only. We're building 5G everywhere in the country. And extended range 5G is going to help us get there faster. Ultra capacity 5G is using our mid-band spectrum and millimeter wave, mostly mid-band at 2.5 gigahertz. We already cover 186 million people, like I said, 200 million every year. By next year, we expect to be at 250 million people covered. So the intention and the promise we made to the FCC was to cover 90% of Americans by end of 2023. We're going to end up with about 85,000 macro sites in total. That's more sites than AT&T and Verizon has or plan to have, and 50,000 small cells. So that's going to be a lot of coverage. And that's where most of the $40 billion that we have been investing in is going to go. So it's being built at a rapid pace and to give us this competitive advantage while our two operating competitors are still trying to figure out how to win the auction today. So that's the lead that we have. So what can a 5G future bring? So we built this huge 5G network, so what? Right, and that's really what my job is at T-Mobile, is to figure out, working with our lines of business, figure out what are some of the use cases that we can use 5G to do. I really, having been involved in every G in wireless so far, I believe that 5G is the first G in wireless that's designed from the ground up to transform the enterprise and consumer space. As great as LTE has been, it is really a very simple generic data layer that was actually built over an original voice network. 5G is different. It's designed from the ground up to disrupt many businesses, whether it's for fan experiences in stadiums, for retail, for automotive, manufacturing, healthcare, energy, and utilities. I'm not going to go through this list. I think I'm preaching to the choir here, right? And this is why we are so excited to work with Jim and the Open Innovation Lab, as well as all the startups there, because you bring the clever ideas, you bring the disruption and the transformative ideas, right, to each of your areas and businesses and enterprise and verticals right, that can leverage our 5G network, right? At the end of the day, Rick and I always say we need to build something bigger than ourselves. We don't have the monopoly on the clever ideas, right? We have spent a lot of money though building a really good 5G network. And when we need the whole village, we need our partners like Amdocs and Intel and Microsoft and Dell and Accenture to help us get there, right? But we all collectively need to work with all the smart, clever people in the startups, right, to figure out what are some of the disruptive use cases we can bring to the table. Every one of us loves the smartphone today. This is the most important computing element we have that we look at every 5 seconds on average, and then we put in our pockets, right? What happens after? What's the next computing platform after the smartphone? That's a scary thought, especially for a company like T-Mobile, where we sell more smartphones than anybody else for the last few years, right? We need to be thinking through that, right? Because there's going to be a time that we call a post-smartphone era, where the computing platform is going to change, right? And that's why we are invested in the 5G Open Innovation Lab. We have our own T-Mobile Accelerator where we bring in startups based on themes. The last 2 startups we brought in for about 3 months each was focused on AR, VR technologies, and the most recent one was on wearables and health and all types of wearables that can leverage a 5G network. We have a small venture fund called T-Mobile Ventures that gives us some ability to provide some seed funding and also some VC funding to promising companies to help us build really the enablers that's needed for 5G to lift and transform businesses in the enterprises as well as in consumers. So this is the whole ecosystem that we're working with, and the 5G Open Innovation Lab is a very important strategy for us, right? As we tap into the innovation world and trying to leverage our network and make our network available to you. So Jim, in the next few charts, I think 3 or 4 more charts to talk about some examples.
Yep.
Of some of the graduates from the Open Innovation Lab. You see this video being played here. This is with a startup from the first cohort called Tactile. Tactile basically creates a software platform called Manifest that really allows the use of augmented reality for frontline workers. Essentially, you can see here in this video, we actually use the Tactile platform with Microsoft's HoloLens for our cell site contractor. This is in Boston to commission an element in a cell site. And by bringing in AR, and this is just an example, you can see this being applicable to all types of frontline work, right? With augmented reality, they can get access to real-time help if they need to, troubleshooting experts that can walk them through step by step when they run into problems. Basically, with see what I see capability, they can pull up manuals and get all types of documents and information real time, right? Without ever having to type into a keyboard or leafing through a whole bunch of manuals. So we found that in this test that the cell site engineer or technician was able to commission the site much more efficiently. And the other thing also is that they learn on the job as well. They don't have to be as well trained because the AR capability will walk them through a step-by-step methods and procedures as they look to commission a cell site. So they are learning on a job as well. The big theme with 5G, one of the big themes with 5G is that we believe that augmented reality and virtual reality is going to work so much better with 5G, right? You're no longer limited to where you can only get good Wi-Fi, right? With AR and VR, right? You can use AR and VR, like in this particular use case with Tactile, in a while, where there's no Wi-Fi, right? But you can get good 5G. Right, and that applies as well to wearables. Today, VR is used a lot for gaming. If you have an Oculus headset, right? But we believe that, once we are able to bring 5G into the game, I think that basically extends the applicability of AR and VR to not just headwear like the HoloLens or Oculus, but in future, the smart glasses as well. And potentially that could be the next computing platform beyond a smartphone. Someday we could ask our customers, hey, just put the smartphone in a pocket and use your smart glasses as your screen, and we can enhance your experience with augmented reality. Not just smart glasses, but other types of wearables as well. So this is one of the areas that we're most we are most excited about with what 5G can bring to the table. Next chart. So here's another use case that's interesting. Halo is also a graduate of the Open Innovation Lab. They are actually rolling out a robot taxi service as we speak in Las Vegas, where they're using remote pilots. So the car it doesn't have a driver. They have a remote pilot that drives the car using our 5G network. And with level 3 artificial intelligence capability, the car learns as it's been remote piloted. So one remote pilot can drive ultimately more than one car, right? And I look at their business case as something between the best of what Zipcar can offer and what Uber can do. So it's the best of Zipcar and Uber, right? And it uses our 5G network for remote piloting. The way it works is that the car would drive up to you. You can use an app and call for the car. Once the car comes to you, you actually get into the car and you drive to where you want to go. And when you get to your destination, just hop off. You don't have to park the car, which is a headache in most major cities. And the car would drive away by itself and pick up the next passenger. That's why I say it's the best of Zipcar, because it actually comes to you, unlike a Zipcar, because it's always hidden in a parking lot you could never find. And then you drive the car and then walk away, a bit like Uber. Except that Uber's case is hard to scale because their business case is always hampered by finding enough drivers and paying them enough money. So anyway, the reason why we like this use case actually is to showcase the use of 5G when you have a big footprint of 5G. I like this personally because I know that AT&T and Verizon would never dare to try to do this now. Imagine trying to drive this with Verizon's 5G network. The car would be in the ditch before you know it, because the 5G is so spotty. And you can tell Hans I said that.
It would go in a very small circle.
Oh, it'll go in a really small circle because all it could get is millimeters away. And go to the next chart. This one is interesting. My team was motivated to do this after we are all basically suffering from Zoom fatigue, stuck at home because of the pandemic. So we were trying to figure out, is there a better way to get out of the two-dimensional Zoom calls to try to create a three-dimensional experience to make real-time video conferencing more personable. And a year ago, we actually worked with another graduate from the Open Innovation Lab called Omnivore. About a year ago, I actually did a first all-hands meeting for my team using the Omnivore system. And basically, we did a three-dimensional capture of the town hall and transmitting it over 5G to a 5G smartphone. And you can actually see on the top right there, the viewer can actually look at a town hall from this laptop. So it'll be a two-dimensional Zoom call, or he can watch it using his 5G smartphone and see a same town hall, but in terms of holograms. That was me standing next to Adam doing a town hall presentation together. Adam's the CEO of Omnivore. The interesting thing is Adam and I were not even in the same city when we did that. And yet when we pulled the town hall together, it looks like we were speaking next to each other. So, this basically shows a little bit about what the future of communications can be. And 5G brings a portable element to it. Interestingly, Google was working on the same concept at the same time as we were. They recently announced the Starline product, which really is bringing live holograms to a video conferencing screen. Some of us had the benefit of watching the demo live when we were up in in Googleplex a few weeks ago, and it's amazing what they have done. You know, you can actually look at a hologram and you actually feel that there's a live person staring in your face because it was so accurate, right? So basically, I think this gives us a glimpse of what the future of real-time communications can be. Amanda, if you go to the next chart. So here's the last one, something fun that we have done with some of the startups. With Action Streamer, we actually put a 5G camera during the Major League Baseball's All-Star week for the Home Run Derby. And with that, we're able to capture real-time shots, what our partners call impossible angles. You will never catch Shohei Ohtani there hitting a 518-yard home run from that view. This was basically a 5G camera mounted on a catcher's helmet during the home run derby. We've also worked with other startups by putting basically streaming 5G using our 5G network, drone footage for the Field of Dreams game that was broadcasted on prime time over Fox Sports on the top right. And then recently, we actually merged the technologies from 3 startups, Iconic Engine, Omnivore, and Nrail, to create basically an AR, VR viewing experience at T-Mobile Park, which is the home stadium for the Seattle Mariners, to show the future of watching sports. You get real-time statistics as the batter comes up using your smart glasses. And you can watch the game real time. In addition to getting additional statistics, you can watch holograms of the Mariner moves, as well as some of the players appearing live in holograms, courtesy of Omnivore. So basically, what we wanted to show with all the startups is that, you know, what's the future like in terms of how we watch sports. So those are just some of the examples. And for my last chart, I wanted to share something with you that we have been working on for quite a while, and it's the T-Mobile 5G Edge Sandbox. I can't think of a better name, and neither could Ron. So that was the best name we can come up with. Basically, it's a Kubernetes cloud at the edge of a network that you can use to run your applications. And we believe that you're going to get much better performance being at the edge of our network than it is from a public cloud sitting on an AWS platform far away. And we invite you to actually, you're the first cohort that we're going to be opening this up to. We invite you to work with us on this if you want access to our network, to make use of this sandbox. Lyle, is Lyle on or Ron? Can you talk a little bit about how can they get who they should reach out, and how can they get on this platform if they want to?
This is Rick. We'll send out a survey to this cohort probably within the next week or so. Just finding out what your requirements are, how much space you have, and then we'll provide you guys access that way.
Yeah, absolutely. This is Lyle. Yeah, Rick. So once we get those back, my team will reach out to the respondents, and look forward to working with you guys.
And for those who don't know where Bothell is, it's here in the Seattle area, just so that everyone understands. Not a household name.
Yeah.
It could be sitting in Bothell. I think the ambition, Ron, correct me if I'm wrong, the ambition is to actually make this available nationwide, right?
You can access it nationwide. It's only the low latency edge, obviously, when you're in the local region.
Yeah. So you don't have to be near Bothell to use this. That's a key point.
That's fantastic. Not to put anybody on the spot, but maybe what we could do in addition to the survey, Rick, is maybe set up a separate session where we can go deep on the 5G Edge sandbox with this batch, but other batches as well, and kind of get the word out more broadly if you guys are open to it.
Yeah, we're inviting the other batches into this. We're going to just launch with this batch. We actually Tactile's up and running already.
Up and running already?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Wonderful.
All right, Jim, that's all I have.
Okay. Lots of material as always. John, you referenced earlier about signing up with the 5G Open Innovation Lab. Just as additional context for our teams, the merger between Sprint and T-Mobile had been going on for some time, and then all of a sudden it happened. And then I think it was within a week or two, through Rick, John and I had a chance to connect, and then John took a leap of faith and kind of bet on us as a program. And here we are ever since. So John, I wanted to acknowledge that bet. Thank you for making that. I think together we've done some amazing stuff.
I think we have, and the fact that I'm still employed is testament that we didn't screw this one up.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
No pressure on us for that. So thank you again for making that bet. We did talk a little bit about the spectrum position that T-Mobile has. Some of our teams could really appreciate that, like Ed Chow from Polte as an example, coming from the industry. But for the other teams, I don't know if they really understand the gravity of why that spectrum position is really important. So to use a cliche term, do you mind if we double click on why that is important? Because I think it not only serves your current aspirations as T-Mobile to your consumer base, but I think it also plays a pretty vital role in your enterprise aspirations as well, perhaps down the line. But
yeah, so basically, to be successful as a 5G operator, you need to be able to provide a 5G network that has the breadth of coverage and the depth of capacity. And in order to do that, you need to have different types of spectrum come to play, right? For breadth of coverage, especially it's important for massive IoT, for enabling use cases out in remote areas and to be constantly connected. You really need to have low band spectrum, which we have with 600. In order to drive capacity, use cases for enhanced mobile broadband, capacity for even your smartphones is a great example. You really need to have the mid-band spectrum, like a 2.5 gigahertz band, that actually provides some pretty decent coverage, right? If you need ultra high capacity, then you need millimeter wave. Those are probably more appropriate for private network use, indoors or in the limited areas, but they provide a lot of massive amount of capacity, right? Basically, the spectrum is the lifeblood that allows us to support all these types of use cases. The interesting in the US is that we have the 3 or 4 operators have confused the mass market by trying to portray their version of 5G based on what they have available. I think the biggest culprit is Verizon, right? Basically, both Verizon and AT&T is out of spectrum. All their spectrum is being used to support the LTE customers. So Verizon started selling 5G as a millimeter wave play, which does a disservice to 5G because it's only available as far as your garage door opener can work. Essentially, it has very limited coverage, but has a lot of capacity, right? And so that's how they have pushed the 5G. That's why I made a joke earlier, which is really not a joke. They will never be able to support a self-driving car over 5G because they don't have the coverage unless they go buy more spectrum, which is what they're doing right now, right? To provide a balanced view, I think I like what we have. I love the assets we have because we have basically all 3 types of spectrum that's needed to be successful. Now, the other 2 guys are not sitting still. They are going to be investing a lot in buying up spectrum to compete with us. And that's good for the economy. That's good for the US, right? It'll take them some time to get to where we are today.
Agreed. I'm going to skip ahead on one of the questions, only because you touched on it in that last answer, which is there's this new market opportunity that I think is unique to 5G that we haven't really seen at scale in the 4G LTE world, and that's really on the private networking side. And it's unique in that enterprises, as you have seen, are really exploring the use of private 4G LTE, private 5G networks in the future. And some of them are evaluating CBRS as a spectrum asset to do it on, and others are possibly looking at licensed spectrum as well. It's not a very clear shot in terms of how that's all going to play out long term. So I'd love to get your sense on how T-Mobile is evaluating private enterprise networking. Is it involved perhaps that as a service? Does it involve perhaps some licensing spectrum to enterprises? That whole market is still forming, and I'd love to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, basically we're doing all that, Jim. We are working with our enterprise customers to understand what their needs are. Maybe it's best to take a step back and understand why there's a need for that. Now, a lot of it is because, if you look at enterprises, they are trying to transform the businesses, right? For instance, in the manufacturing case, they are looking at bringing in, industry 4.0 concepts, right? If you talk about utilities, they're trying to build smart grids, right? With a regulatory pressure on them to get away from fossil fuels and focus on renewable energy, right? All that has a role for 5G to play, right? In many cases, they're looking at, hey, I need better security. I need the ability to retain my data better than what an operator can do. So we work with them to basically look at building private networks. The interesting thing with private networks is that it's never really just an island by itself. It needs connectivity to the macro network, especially when you move, right? And so that's where we come in. We are looking at basically opportunities in the private networks world to, either as a macro provider that seamlessly connected to private networks. We are looking at providing services as well for those companies that need help in terms of standing up their private networks. We have actually certified and tested a number of private network radios that they can use with us that works well, with our core and our macro networks. So all types of opportunities. The business case is still being worked out. Obviously, with a private network, the enterprise itself will pay some of the bill. We will provide some support for that as well. We will need services support as well from actually some of our partners on the Open Innovation Lab, whether it's Microsoft or Accenture or MDoc. So I think there's a big opportunity there. But let's not forget why private networks are needed. It allows enterprises to tap into capabilities where they can bring in artificial intelligence, machine learning to, let's say, the factory floor a lot faster with 5G. But it's with a macro network or a private network. It's not possible before with LTE because it's not as flexible, right? And certainly we are all realizing now there are limitations to Wi-Fi as well, right? And that's why private networks has been looked at. And that's why 5G is going to help drive that capability, because for the first time, like I said, this is the first G that's actually designed from the ground up to disrupt enterprises like that.
Agreed. Going back to the Magenta, not Magenta Box, but the T-Mobile Cloud Service, a lot of the other competitors in your space here domestically, but also abroad, have really been exploring different partnership models as well, the Google Clouds or the Microsoft Azures and so on and so forth. So it's really exciting to see T-Mobile actually leaning in on exploring this edge component. For the teams that are on the calls today, it's one thing to say, hey, let's help you guys run your application on our edge. But if you were to have a crystal ball and kind of look at that opportunity longer term, is it safe to say that T-Mobile's aspiration is actually to have a sort of a meaningful position in the edge services play long term?
Yes, and I'll let Ron and Rick and everybody else in T-Mobile jump in as well. My view is that, we're not going to be a hyperscaler, and nor do we want to compete with them, right? All our enterprise customers typically use one of the big three, AWS, Azure, or Google's, right? What we can bring value to is we can be a faster conduit to the clouds, and that's where edge computing comes in.
Yep.
Right. And you cannot talk about a private network without talking about a private edge, right? Whether it's a private cloud or a public cloud, right? Where we bring value is that we can bring 5G to the equation, right? That makes AI and machine learning meaningful, right? When you're talking about AI, you're talking about real-time predictions. Even if you're 1 millisecond late, that data is completely useless. Doesn't matter if you have the best hyperscaler supporting you, right? And that's the value that we bring to the table. So T-Mobile's position is, yes, we want to be a multi-cloud. We'll want to support our customers with a multi-cloud play, right? And we want to build the best edge possible, right, to get access to those clouds in the shortest possible time with the lowest jitter.
Sweet. Ron or Lyle, anything you'd like to add?
No, I mean, I think John said it all, and we're not going to replace a hyperscaler for sure, but I think the real estate close to the edge of the network is important, and there may be some use cases where it makes sense to do something on our own, but largely partner with folks. And you can see how hard it is to work for John. 1 millisecond late and you're in trouble.
John
That's
thinks
right. I
in
was only
milliseconds
1
and milliseconds.
millisecond late.
Right. Interesting. No, that's really cool. And just as a reminder for all of our teams today, you're hearing this for the first time, myself included. So let's kind of keep this discretionary. Let's not tweet about it or get the news out just yet. Let's follow the lead from T-Mobile on it. Wonderful. So any questions from any of our teams or partners who are listening in? I don't want to hog too much of the time. I've got more to ask.
Hey, John, it's Tejas. Awesome presentation and kind of all the stuff that you've been working on from an emerging tech perspective. Is it just where do you kind of place your bets in terms of all the things that you now have been experimenting with, where you think it's, real-time kind of productization, monetization capabilities from stuff you've been working on? Because, part of it's emerging tech, which might be 2 to 3 years out, but in terms of your thinking on how to commercialize some of this stuff, any thoughts there?
That's the $60 billion question, Teddy. So let me give a stab at this, and the rest of the team more folks can jump in. I think, if I look at a consumer space, right, the smartphone is going to be dominant for a long time.
Yeah.
Smartphone is actually evolving to become your personal gateway, right? That you attach your smartwatch to for biometrics. You attach your spatial speakers to the headphones. You're going to be attached to a smart glass someday, like what we demonstrated at the stadium. So I think the smartphone's going to be around, but I'm very optimistic about the potential to bring AR and VR to the masses beyond just the gaming community or the entertainment community. And I think on the consumer space, I think gaming is one example. AR with gaming is something that's portable. That potentially is an opportunity we want to visit. I talked about smart glasses before, right? I don't think the technology is there yet, but if you can put on a smart glass that doesn't make you look like a dog, and use it as your screen, and put your phone in a pocket, that's another opportunity that we're looking at. If you look at what folks like Facebook is doing, they're spending $10 billion creating a whole new. They might even change their names now, apparently, to focus on the metaverse, right? And so it's exciting when you sit down with them and look at their vision and where they want to bring the whole metaverse space, right? They're not the only guys working on it. A lot of the big corporations are making bets there as well. If we look at the enterprise space, I think the opportunity is like what Jim got to, right? Private networks, private edge, public edge. Those are important, and that's where the whole motivation is to bring AI and machine learning closer to their end use, right? Factory floors, cars, and everything, right? And I think that's where the opportunity is. But let me end my answer.
We're definitely seeing a lot on the private network side for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, and by the way, when I'm talking about applications like this, there's a whole bunch of enablers that we need to make all these things happen, right? And that's why the fourth cohort is exciting to us, because some of you guys are working on security, some of you guys are working on precision on location. All this is needed to enable basically a consumer-based AR experience that makes sense, right? To secure all our IoT devices. That's going to be like a gazillion of them, right? So everything that I think the fourth cohort is working on, I think is needed, right, as enablers to enable this vision. I was going to end my answer by telling you something really funny. The most compelling business case I've seen so far, actually from my team, is actually to build virtual cadavers. We did it as a fun thing with one of the medical schools, where you can use a Vive headset, and one thing I learned: medical schools don't have enough cadavers for years, and with COVID, nobody's going to touch it because we don't know whether the body has COVID. So there's a dire need for cadavers, and when we asked them what was the biggest need that we can help them solve with 5G, they said, help us build a virtual cadaver, which we did with Victory XR and Vive, and now we're getting a lot of calls from almost a lot of medical schools because they want to be able to use a virtual cadaver where you can have a lot more flexibility. So that's one compelling business case that we would never have imagined. That was just like a funny joke, but that's also the reality of where things that 5G can do to disrupt a lot of different spaces, including education.
We're having a hard time getting that one through marketing.
Yeah, well said. Mike Seymour, you had a question from Enclave?
Yeah, hey John, I'm not sure how to follow up virtual cadavers, but I'll try to compose my question appropriately after that. So I'm trying to, and this is not a technology question, but it's more of you sitting in the C-suite when we're T-Mobile's investing, especially TFB. where are you all investing in kind of sales enablement on the enterprise side? Are you focusing on specific verticals? Right, everybody's got the same vertical use cases, and when I was at HP, and even when I was working with you, similar ideas. But for me, I'm just trying to base small startup, trying to sniff through the noise and smell the money, and look at really where are you investing on enterprise sales to say, hey, it's healthcare or private LT for oil and gas, or just so we can try to align use cases more quickly to engage with you all. Just would love to see where that holistic view from your C-suite partners is focused.
I think the TFB team is focused on many verticals right now. A lot of focus on airlines, utilities, oil and gas. Certainly, some of our biggest customers. Logistics is another one, right? I don't think we have a particular focus on anything in particular, but some of the announcements I've seen are in those areas. Healthcare is another one. We have a couple of good announcements recently with some hospitals. It's still early to pick the winners. So I think Mike Katz's team is basically brought in a whole bunch of experts in different areas, focused on some of these areas. We're still selling them a lot of phones and corporate phone lines, right? More and more though, they're starting to look at applications beyond the phones, like tactiles becoming an important opportunity for them with AR, selling AR and VR capabilities. Industrial IoT. We had good traction in the past before pre-5G. I think we're going to continue to build on that, and there might be some announcements coming up pretty soon, actually, about our massive IoT play. I don't want to pre-announce anything, but that's coming.
Yeah, and if I can just add to that, I think the dynamic that goes on is that there's, some people believe in focusing in verticals, and others focus on capabilities, which plug into a whole bunch of different verticals. And so there is always that dynamic of the strategy team saying, here's our vertical focus, and the innovation and product team saying, well, I'm focused on this capability. It happens to plug into 3 or 4 of your verticals. And, we're engaged with quite a few of you folks on the call now, and a bunch of folks from the earlier cohorts. And, one of the challenges just in general is that we're trying to plug into platforms and systems and ecosystems that are maybe a year and a half out from reaching market maturity. And so that's why you might not see a lot of announcements coming out, but there's a lot of engagement going on internally, because we don't want to just offer you up a reseller program and access to our sales force. We want to do something that has deeper integration into our own platforms and capabilities, so that what we're offering is a little bit more meaningful in the market.
Thank you, Lee and John, for that. Dave from Spire.
And Lee, just to introduce Lee. Lee is actually from TFB. He runs a lot of innovation programs at TFB, and is an important partner for all of us as we look at trying to drive more innovation in the company. Good answer.
Great. Lee is our fearless TFB leader who doesn't take no for any answers. He just continues pushing and pushing and pushing. Thank you, Lee. Dave from Spire, you had a question on security?
Yeah, thank you, John. I really loved your comments on the Edge Sandbox using Kubernetes and VMware, and then your subsequent comments around the fact that security is clearly an obvious area where you should be able to differentiate. I'm interested to know how you folks think in terms of leading the standardization of your environment, or expressing the security components to the folks that will land initially in the sandbox, but ultimately in your ecosystem, and how we might be able to help drive a very simple but standardized way to assure that you have the right kind of isolation in that environment. Ultimately, all these ecosystems emerge well when we can assure the folks that use them that they're secure. That was obviously the biggest hurdle that the big public cloud guys, the hyperscalers, had to cross, and they did it well. It's very gratifying to see you select solutions that have really strong security components to them. The VMware initiatives, whether it's Tanzu or Monterey or elsewhere, in combination with Kubernetes and the open source ecosystem, is going a long way to making sure that you have a really vibrant and open framework that you can deploy there from a security perspective.
So I'll let Lal or Ron pipe in on that. They are more of an expert in how to your big questions. How do we get the end users to buy in, or get some sort of a common standard for that? My view at a higher level is that, we need to look at different ways of securing our devices from the traditional security protocols, simply because we have more distributed components out there. And the bad guys are also getting smarter. So we need to look at all types of capabilities to secure our network. A more distributed security architecture is probably needed. Probably even leveraging folks stuff like from blockchain capability, right? So and everything that you guys are doing, that some of you are focused on, I think it's very important. Ron and Lyle, you guys want to chime in on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So just adding on to what John said. So obviously, we did pick VMware and other partners strategically with not just security, but just ease in mind, right? Go with lots of parts, but then there's some assembly required. We obviously don't have time today, but as we kind of go into a deeper dive, right, what you'll find is we've taken a lot of our security practices from a telco network perspective, right, that we would expect, as well as what we consider best practices from our partners, right, listening to others. And part of these surveys that Rick mentioned, right, really trying to get into more of what people are using, what's working well and what's not, and combining that. And that's really going to be our first pass. Now, keep in mind, this is our first pass at this with cohorts. So it's always a work in progress, and security keeps you busy. So it's always going to be changing. So, but the way I think of it, just to summarize, the best practice is what we know from our partners, what we're hearing from the cohort members, and what we know as an operator. And we'll be looking forward to working with everybody and seeing that evolve and becoming a much more secure ecosystem as we work forward or work together moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's great, Lyle. I appreciate that's a comprehensive answer. Just an offer from us. We are working with other standard environments, so the NetSec Open Forum and the Metro Ethernet Forum, to standardize many of the areas around communication security, network security, in the way that John described. It all needs to change. It's all distributed. It's all node-based in an onboarding sense, but it needs to be massively scalable, and the policies need to be able to be distributed and granular. So we're happy to help the partners, the cohort members, anyone who wants to get plugged into that discussion. We'd love to participate with it, because in the end, all of these things have the best chance to succeed at the scale we all hope, if we can ensure that they're secure. I love those comments, so thank you both.
Yeah, and this is one of the areas why we love to work with the startups and experts in this area, because we can learn from you, and for you to advise us in terms of how best do we make a bigger impact, right, in the whole area of security. Right, you spend more time of your day thinking through these things, and we don't need to reinvent the wheel if we work closer with you and support what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and it's kind of a proof point on security. That's really one of the major reasons it's taken until cohort 4 to get anything out there. It's relatively straightforward to turn up servers. It's another thing to do so in a way that goes through all the hurdles to prove that things are safe.
Thank you, Dave, for that question. Last question's from Ed Chow out of Pulte. Ed, did you want to ask your question?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you, John, for your inspiring charts earlier. It was the most salient and actually real, use cases for 5G that I've seen. So congratulations for snubbing the other two guys here in the U.S. And by the way, thank you for using the spectrum. That in my previous life of Metro PCS, where we brought that spectrum earlier, you've done a great job of integrating and taking it to the next level.
I think I met you when you were at Metro, and I was trying to sell you my 2.5 gigahertz spectrum at the time.
Well, congratulations for reverse taking it in. So good job. But we're super excited working with your team. So thank you for all that, and really excited about all. But a question for generally here. One of the things about the edge and for private edge, and we talk about latency and performance and putting AI and ML on the edge, which all make a lot of sense. Do you see any opportunities for the edge and private for other reasons, such as data sovereignty, data control, and if so, are there any particular verticals or use case opportunities there? And then my second question, which I didn't want to let you off the hook on, was what's your view of Open RAN and opportunities there for us here at the Open Innovation Lab?
Sure. So I'll take a stab at it. I think maybe Ron or Rick can follow on as well. I think once you build an edge capability for a customer, that is limitless potential of what they can use for it with it, including a lot of intelligence and capability. So, I think the possibilities are endless, right? Like I said, they are trying to make their businesses more efficient by tapping into prediction capabilities with AI and machine learning and even natural language processing and capabilities that 5G can bring with a private edge. So I think it's limitless. In terms of questions on Open RAN, that's an area that we're watching carefully. I believe that in future, I think a lot of the infrastructure is going to go towards a more open type interface. Because of our aggressive build, T-Mobile is not really using any Open RAN at the moment because we just cannot wait for that space to mature. We're in the middle of spending a lot of money building a network that we want to build it fast before AT&T and Verizon wakes up. But it doesn't mean we don't like it. I think there's some maturing that needs to happen. As we look at Open RAN, I believe that in future a lot of interfaces will be specified as an open capability anyways. So for us, it's more of a cap and grow story, right? A network build is never done, as you know, Ed. We need to get through covering the whole country, and then as we look at growing beyond that, we will evaluate Open RAN. So as a focus on Open Innovation Lab, I think that's where the puck's going. I think that's a good area to be looking at because that's where the whole world's going. Virtualized RAN, Open RAN, right? Centralized RAN. Ron, Rick, anything to add, or Lyle?
Yeah, I guess the point on the private edge, faster, closer equals more secure, and that seems to be a primary concern that we're starting to feel. So I think anytime that you can offer faster, closer, it'd be very hard for a company to transition backwards from that space. Very hard to intercede something that is so fast and so close.
I'd say it's an open question too on Open RAN, going back to that one, about how all the integration occurs and how to do that in the best way possible. Looking back in my past, 5 or 6 years ago, we had a startup come to us with it was full duplex technology, and you ask them how they're going to go to market. They say, well, we're going to make small cells for you and we're going to sell them to you. It's like, well, now you have to be just as good as Ericsson or Nokia at all this 3GPP stuff, which takes an army of thousands of people, and you're going to do your secret sauce, and that doesn't make sense. So part of what we want to learn from all of you is what you have as technologies, and then we can jointly kind of figure out how we Open RAN or how we best bring that to market in a way that helps you and satisfies our integration needs.
Excellent. Well, we're just at time. I think we nailed it. John, thank you again, and Rick and Lyle and Ron and Amanda and everyone for joining us today, having a great conversation as always. We really do appreciate it. As John, you may have heard earlier, guys, we have our board meeting here on December 8th. John will be here in person. We're hoping to keep him a little longer to get you guys introduced to him as well in person around December. So thank you, John, for your time, and everyone from the T-Mobile team for a great session today. We appreciate it. Certainly.
Thank you, and welcome to the fourth cohort. We really look forward to working with you.
Thank you again. Have a great day, guys. Cheers.
Yeah.
Bye.